It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Indeed, and great to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thank you, Chad Erickson. Lots to do over the next 60 minutes of this broadcast, including Brian Kenny will hang out with us coming up in 10 minutes. Spend a couple of segments talking about Major League Baseball with the host of MLB Now on MLB Network, friend of the program. Alex Ovechkin adds to what has been a dream season in a Capitals playoff win. We'll get to that. And I'm starting to wonder where the madness ends when it comes to paying college athletes. And I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking about coming up here in a couple minutes on that a little later on in the show anyway. Sam Yarnell is here because if we're talking baseball with Brian Kenny, you knew Sam wasn't going to miss it. You knew Sam was going to be here for that. So he hangs out with us on the show today. So Clippers and Pistons rebound for, let's get the NBA out of the way here. 2 games last night, Clippers and Pistons, both rebound for game 2 wins. Look, everything that I'm like a Jedi. I'm like Yoda. I told you this Clippers-Nuggets series, Knicks-Pistons, were going to be 2 of the best series, despite the fact that I think the Knicks are going to win, and I think the Clippers are going to win their series. These are going to be 2 lengthy series. They could be the saving graces of this first round of the NBA playoffs that looks like it has some duds in it, Sam. Clippers, let's start with them last night. Going on the road, obviously, in Game 2, beating the Nuggets, surviving the late game attempts from Denver in that win. And what more can you say about Kawhi Leonard, who continues to turn back the clock, Sam? 15 of 19 shooting in that game. He was the bulk of the Clippers offense in this game because James Harden didn't do a lot. Zubats gave him a little in the middle, as we have told you he would in this series. But it was all about Kawhi Leonard and what he did last night.
It was, and you know, the question therein remains with the Los Angeles Clippers, right? Because they'll be good and contenders as long as Kawhi continues to do this. The question, however, still is, as it has been for the last month, how long can Kawhi Leonard do this? Listen, if the guy's dropping 30 whatever points on like 75% shooting, something that I think like only Elgin Baylor has done in the shot clock era, then the Clippers are probably going to the NBA Finals. Realistically, is that going to happen? I don't know about NBA Finals. Conference Finals for sure. However, like even between Game 1 and Game 2, Game 1 that they lost, you still see a big difference in this Clippers team, and you see them look a lot different without James Harden performing the way he did in Game 1. And it takes Kawhi Leonard having a historic performance to pull a very close game out by 3 points at the end. So I'll still have my doubts about the Clippers, but listen, as someone who famously has backed the Denver Nuggets on this program, I did not feel good about them after this game. This was troublesome for me as a Denver Nuggets supporter in this NBA postseason on the Western Conference side, because Nikola Jokic played a great game, obviously. A triple-double, 26 points or something like that. Like, that is what you need from Nikola Jokic. You should be winning every game that he does that in, but instead they can't get the pieces around him going. They're not able to get stops when they need to, and Jason, that to me is a big concern for Denver in these playoffs.
Aaron Gordon was huge in Game 1. They put a lid on him in Game 2, just 5 of 14 shooting, or 5 of 13 shooting in that game for Aaron Gordon. Look, if Kawhi can continue to play these kind of minutes, he played 39 minutes in Game 2. If he continues to play at that level, they are certainly a threat for the conference finals. And if they get there, they're a tough. Look, I told you before the playoffs started, they would be a tough out, and they certainly will be. Jokic did what Jokic does, but the Clippers get the win on the road. They go back to LA tied for the first playoff game at Intuit Dome. Knicks and Pistons. Look, you can only play from behind in the playoffs so much. And while the Pistons collapsed in Game 1, they learned from their lessons in Game 2. And they used and leaned on those veterans, Dennis Schroeder, Tobias Harris, who had some big rebounds late in this game. They leaned on those veterans at Madison Square Garden, a raucous environment with the Knicks rallying in that game. But the Knicks have played from behind virtually this entire series. And if they don't figure out a way to play from ahead a little bit here, this thing could go the wrong way for Tom Thibodeau and company.
Yeah, so there were a couple of things that I took away from this game. It was very, very important for the franchise trajectory of the Detroit Pistons for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, everyone's been talking about how it snaps their 15-game losing streak in the playoffs. Yeah, whatever. The more important thing is Cade Cunningham scored 33 points in a win in Madison Square Garden. For a player playing in his second ever playoff game, that is huge for a cornerstone of your franchise. This game for Cade Cunningham cannot go understated. It was incredibly important, both in his career arc and in the arc of the Detroit Pistons franchise, because when you got a young player who's comfortable playing in a huge environment in the playoffs, that is incredibly important to the playoff success of your franchise. That said, Jason, and gosh, going on year 3 of me talking about this on this show, but Tom Thibodeau's style of basketball is not sustainable through an entire NBA playoffs, and it showed last night for the Knicks.
Listen, Karl Anthony Towns didn't take a shot in the final quarter and a half of this game. How is that happening? How is that happening? Tom Thibodeau, you could complain all you want post-game about Jalen Brunson not getting foul calls. It's the playoffs. Coaches do this stuff all the time. I get it. But you cannot go a quarter and a half if you're Karl Anthony Towns and not take a single shot. That can't happen. He's 5 of 11 for the entire game. They put this entire game on Jalen Brunson's shoulders. Mikal Bridges tried to give him a little bit and kept him in it when they were getting spanked through the first, 3 quarters of this game. The Knicks got nothing from their bench, including minutes, because Mitchell Robinson and Miles McBride were the only 2 guys that played significant minutes off the bench. Cameron Payne helped you in game 1. You barely saw him in game 2. I thought he was in witness protection. So tough loss for the Knicks. We'll see what happens in game 3 back in Detroit. By the way, one other note on that Nuggets game, Sam. 20 turnovers for the Nuggets. You ain't winning playoff games against good teams with 20 turnovers.
You're not winning playoff games when you give the last shot to Christian Brown, who had shot 1 3 and he missed it all game.
All right, we're going to calm Sam down so we can talk some baseball with Brian Kenny from MLB Now and MLB Network. He joins us next on SportsWrap. Welcome back to the show. We got the NBA playoffs out of the way. Let's talk some baseball. I could do 6 segments of baseball every day, especially when this guy hangs out with us. Brian Kenny of MLB Network, MLB Now, noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. Unless there's a game on and he gets preempted or something, I don't know. Brian,
no, that rarely happens.
Yeah, okay, all right. I'm just making
Not
sure.
anymore.
Just making sure. Brian Kenny hanging out with us on the program. Let me start with this Braves situation with Snitker, Acuña, Kelenic. I was watching Michael Wilbon yesterday, a former colleague of yours over at ESPN, say, I'm mad, and because it's not fair that Snitker took this approach with Acuña and then this approach with Kelenic. I know that Snitker's tried to sort of walk it back a little bit, and he's talked to Kelenic. Acuña obviously wasn't happy about it. Combined with the bad start for this team, how bad is this for the Braves right now?
Well, the whole situation is tricky in that because we follow this every day. We do hustling, non-hustling. We do a thing called Baseball Plays every single day on MLB Now, which is baseball awareness, competitive fire. We're always talking about it. So I'll say we follow this every single day. We have Joe Madden on once a week where we ask, how should you handle these situations? Anytime there's a benching for anybody or a situation where a guy could be benched or makes boneheaded plays one after another, or we question these things all the time. They're all different and they're not applied the same way. And usually, like what Joe Madden will tell us all the time, is you often don't punish the guy the first time you see it. You don't get on everybody for everything. Now, Kelnick's thing was egregious. It was sloppy. Not the worst thing we've ever seen, but certainly sloppy in that instance. If it was a playoff game, it'd be a huge thing, but it's not. But yeah, he could have been benched for that. But we don't know how many plays did Acuña in 2019, how many plays led up to the play where he was benched? From what I'm hearing and from what I recall, it was a number of things. And that's what Joe Madden will normally say. That's what most every manager will say. It wasn't the first thing. I've heard Kevin Cash say that about players when guys got benched. Like, hey, it wasn't that one. That was small, but that was just that was the straw that broke it. It was just too many, we had to stop it. So you can't just randomly apply, which I've seen in the media as well. It's wrong to say he benched him for that. Why didn't you bench him for this? Because Acuña doesn't get benched every time he dogs it. He got benched one time when he dogged it. Not every time. And Kelnick, not every time. And yeah, it would have been cleaner if Snitker had seen the play. Evidently, he didn't see it. That's not covering himself in glory there. But it would have been cleaner to say what he said at the end, which is the guy plays with his hair on fire normally, which means you and I know, Jason, you can build equity. If your hardest worker at your job is always getting after it, and then he has a bad thing happen, you go, hey, you know what? It's okay. You work your tail off every day here. We get it. But if you're kind of sloppy and then you do it, it's different. So these things are vastly different. And I've seen some things written that are very unfair to Snitker, like questioning, like, do you treat Latin players differently from white players?
Yeah.
And clearly that's
what Wilbon was intimating. That's what Wilbon was intimating. There's no question in my mind that's what Wilbon is intimating.
And Snitker should be insulted. It's deeply insulting. And look, it can be, Acuña can think it. He can talk about it with his friends. He can call Snitker on the phone, right? He can call the GM, Alex Anthopoulos, on the phone and say, how come that guy doesn't get benched? He can do lots of things by going public. Now it airs it out that he still has a burr in his saddle over that. It was 6 years ago. Nobody has thought of that for a long time in regards to Acuña because he had a monstrous season well after that. But now you can look back and say, okay, oh yeah, that guy did dog it. And also, we weren't thinking about Jared Kelnick dogging it until he brought it up. So he's aired out a lot of things that didn't need to be aired out.
Brian, I want to stick in the National League for a second because two players who are definitely not getting benched at least anytime soon, Corbin Carroll and Fernando Tatis Jr., they've been absolutely tearing the cover off the ball to start the season. But my question for you is this. In a baseball world where Shohei Ohtani is healthy, and I know it's April, very early to ask this question, but can Tatis or Carroll realistically compete for an MVP award in a baseball world that has Shohei Ohtani in a season where he should, theoretically, if all things go correctly, come back and pitch for at least, say, 50 innings this year?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Look, right now, Ohtani's having a very good year. But, it's weird. Like, again, this is a couple of days old at this point. But he's having a really good year. I don't know, it's 400 on base. He's slugging 550. But the previous 2 years, Ohtani slugged 650. There's a difference. It's 100 points difference in slugging. It's a big difference. So if Ohtani is slugging 550, that's enormously successful. It's not quite MVP, but it's close to it. If he pitched 150 innings and slugged 550, it would certainly probably put him over the top. But again, I did the math on this when he was competing with Aaron Judge for MVP a few years ago and saying that, look, Judge beat him straight up, offense and defense alone, over a guy who was hitting and pitching, not playing defense. You can do the math on this and figure it out. So no, the type of starts that they're having, they're so far outdistancing Ohtani, who doesn't play the fields, by the way. Like, that's not a small thing. That's a big thing. And if he's not pitching or pitching limited, then no question. I don't think he's the MVP right now.
Wow. Interesting. Real quick here in the last minute of this segment, the Dodgers, they're dealing with pitching injuries, trying to get Kershaw back. Just sort of, I don't, coming off a World Series, I don't think it's a bad start for the Dodgers here. I was at a bowling alley last night and somebody was saying, Dodgers are off to this slow start. I'm like, slow start? What slow start?
Yeah, but again, they they've set a standard for themselves that's extremely high. Now, remember last year, it seemed like they were a little underwhelming. They still won, and they won the title, but they won 98 games. They've been averaging 104 over the last 7-8 years, Jason. 104, averaging. So now they do total world, global domination. They get Snell, they get Yamamoto, they get Sasaki right after a year after they get Yamamoto, where they seem to have the great advantage in getting Japanese superstars. So, it is disappointing for them, given that this was a year where you're looking, this could be their best Dodger team that we've seen, which is saying something.
Brian Kenny, going to hold you for one more segment. Got a couple more questions to ask you. The A's make a big decision as far as their future is concerned with a call-up. Sam wants to ask you about that. Whole bunch more with Brian Kenny as we continue on Sports Wrap. All right, segment 3 of the show. Continuing the conversation with Brian Kenny, MLB Network. MLB Now, weekdays noon Eastern, over on MLB Network. Sam Yarnell hanging out with us as well. Sam, you had a question on the A's. Go ahead.
Yeah, Brian, obviously one of the big stories in baseball this week is Nick Kurtz coming up for the Athletics with no city attached to their name. The kid's been tearing up the minor leagues so far this year, but I wanted to ask you more kind of in the broad sense. How do you feel about the Athletics, playing in this minor league stadium while having a guy like Soderstrom who's breaking out this year, leading the league in homers after giving out 2 massive contracts this offseason into the beginning of this season? What is the next step for the Athletics?
Well, I think it does show a number of things, even looking at what the A's are doing, even what the Marlins are doing, that you can, just when it seems all is lost, you can flip from being a no-hoper to being reasonably competitive fairly quickly through drafting and developing and some trades on the margins. And we've seen already between, Soderstrom and a bunch of their young players, like Brett Rooker just emerged, hasn't been that long now, where you can turn things around quickly. Now, this city situation is a bit of a mess. They're playing in Sacramento. I happen to like watching Major League Baseball in minor league parks. I like watching Rays games. I like watching A's games. It's a good TV show. I know it's not ideal, but it's certainly, as we call it, intimate, right? It's fun. But it shows you how quick you can turn things around. Look, they're competitive. The A's aren't, good yet, but good is within sight. And I'm sure I'm not sure, but I would think that they're looking to be highly competitive. It wasn't how long ago the A's were winning 97 games, by the way. They're looking to be at that level or somewhere near that level when they get to Vegas. And I thought, okay, you got a couple of years to get there. They're a lot closer than I thought they were going to be.
A thought on the Tigers here, because a lot of people wondered the late burst last year to get them into the postseason, had that city on fire for a couple of weeks, which was great. 14-9 out of the gate for the Tigers, showing this thing is no fluke, is it, Brian?
No, they're a good team, and they're hurt too. Like they have injuries. They don't have Parker Meadows right now. Vierling they don't have, and yet, they're putting Javi Baez in center field, and yet they're competitive. They're really tough on the field. They're starting pitching. They've got a 4-man rotation. Everybody, their top 4, which is odd. They have a 5-man rotation, but 4 of them have ERAs in the 2s, which is strange because last year the Tigers didn't even have a rotation. You couldn't say it's unfair to say that you didn't rotate. It was Scooble and then bullpen days. So the rotation never actually rotated. It wasn't a rotation. It was one guy, maybe 2, and then try to get the bullpen involved. And now they've got this solid, excellent, 4-man rotation at the top. And they've got about 7 guys in the bullpen. Maybe I'm not exaggerating now. I think it's a solid 5 guys with an ERA in the 1s. In their bullpen. So they're pitching great, and they battle with every at-bat. Again, A.J. Hinch does a marvelous job. I thought he did a fantastic job last year. They platoon aggressively. They pinch hit aggressively. They look for every small advantage. Series with the Padres is excellent. You can see just what they're good at. They're a tough out, even when they're a little hobbled. Kerry Carpenter isn't at full strength, and he's their best player. Even a little bit hobbled, they're a tough out.
Brian, when we talk about the AL East, obviously kind of working our way back from the West through the Central and now to the East, the Orioles are a team that got a lot of ridicule for not making a single standout move this offseason. Obviously, Zach Eflin was their opening day starter, and now they're looking up at a playoff position pretty substantially. Do you think that it's as simple as they're not contenders anymore, or is it going to take one more year for that young core to kind of come back and be ready to play every day at the major league level?
No, I wouldn't say they're out this year either. I mean, they did get Tomo Sugano, who's been good. Again, he's an older guy, but he's a good Japanese pitcher. So they didn't do anything, but I know what you mean. They weren't especially transactional when they could have been more aggressive. Jackson Holiday hasn't blown up yet. Gunnar Henderson was hurt early. I wouldn't count them out for this year. There's a lot of talent there. They are light in the rotation. Their bullpen, though, can harken back to a few years ago when they have Batista and Cano. So I think they're still contenders in that division, but they're no longer this heavyweight that they seem to be, right? But I think if all they do is get regular reps where Rutschman is hitting again, Holiday emerges, and Gunnar Henderson becomes Gunnar Henderson again, you're going to see a pretty awesome machine there. Again, those are high-level, talented players. And, yeah, their rotation is not up to snuff. But, again, in that division, how good are the Rays? Pretty good. How good are the Yankees? Pretty good. How good are the Red Sox? Pretty good on some days. Other days, not so good. So everybody's kind of there. Blue Jays, they're good. They're not great. Everybody's like high-level B-plus middle class. And that doesn't mean they're bad. It means they're good. But nobody's great. So I think the Orioles are still within striking distance.
If I didn't ask you a question about the Yankees and Mets, I'd be probably fired. Well, I can't be fired. It's my show. But the Yankees and Mets here. Yankees at 14-9. The Mets unstoppable at home, 10-1, 16-7 on the year. What do you make of those two teams right now?
Well, I'll start with the Yankees. Look, not having Luis Gil and then the loss of Garrett Cole for the year really changed the equation. They went from, I thought, an elite team, at the top, not quite the Dodgers, but just below that, with the Phillies and I thought the Braves. And then they dropped down now from being an A to a B plus. And there's a big difference there because, as I just mentioned, the rest of the division is a B plus. The Mets are interesting that they made a lot of smallish moves, Griffin Canning level moves that have worked out great. I'm doing a thing on MLB Now on how they spent their money. Their whole rotation, that's pitching now, not counting Montas and Manaea, because those were bigger money guys. But their whole rotation is under $40 million. That's less than the Phillies spend on Zach Wheeler alone. So, David Stearns very smartly was able to piece it together. I think even ownership, Steve Cohen, learned, hey, we went the Verlander, aging Scherzer route. Let's just try to mix and match and make it happen. Stearns did it last year, with Severino and Manaea, and he's doing it this year with Griffin Canning and Clay Holmes and guys like that. Just a little ingenuity, and now they're competing, toe-to-toe with the Phillies, who are a real heavyweight.
Brian Kenny always does a great job. MLB Now, catch him weekdays, noon Eastern, over on MLB Network. Shorter baseball games have started to work with me. I'm getting better at dealing with it.
Are you talking pitch clock? You're still not with the timer?
Shorter games, shorter games in general. I'm doing better.
They're 2.5 hours long. What's wrong? What could possibly be wrong with that?
Brian, I always appreciate you, my friend. Be well.
All right. Take care, fellas. See you, Jason.
Coming up in 10 minutes. Something to consider, and boy, do we really have to start considering what is going on with college athletics right now and how it impacts everything else beyond it. I think there's something being missed here. Forced through the trees sort of thing. Sam Yarnell, let's talk some NHL, and boy, it is the dream season of dream seasons for Alex Ovechkin right now. You cannot ask for anything more if you are Alex Ovechkin than to break the all-time goal-scoring record. Now, granted, he didn't get to 900 goals, which we thought might be something that maybe, combined with winning a Stanley Cup could influence what he does after this season is done vis-a-vis retirement, or if he hangs around for one more year. It's something we've talked about on this show. But he gets the game winner in overtime. Capitals beat the Canadiens in game one of that Eastern Conference playoff series. And boy, I mean, the hits just keep rolling here for Alex Ovechkin.
Folks, I hope you're tuned in because you're witnessing history every time that guy takes the ice at this point. It feels like destiny almost. Like it feels like destiny is brewing. And I'm getting really close to placing a little wager on the Washington Capitals to win the Stanley Cup.
What can you get him at right now?
You know,
what's the number on him right now? Do you know? I'll look while you're talking.
Not sure.
You talk. I'll look.
So here's how this game went for me personally. I turned it on, frankly, midway through the second period, saw it was 2-0.
They were 11-1. God, how are they 11-1?
It's because no one in the hockey world believes in them.
And I kind of understand
it.
The seventh lowest. I mean, wow.
Yeah. I kind of understand it. I mean, you're trotting out, Logan Thompson as your game one starter, and backing up him is Charlie Lindgren. Like, those are not Stanley Cup winning goaltenders. They're not Super Bowl winning goaltenders either. Anyway, I turned this game on 2-0 in the second period. I watched for a couple minutes, and the Caps were dominating. I was like, all right, I'm not wasting my time with this. It'll be 4-0 by the end, and I will have wasted, an hour of my life watching Dylan Strome score a goal that he doesn't need to on an empty net with 57 seconds left in this game when I thought it could still be interesting. Hour goes by, get a notification on my phone. Tune in. The Canadiens and Caps are tied at 2, heading to overtime. I was like, what did I miss? So obviously immediately tuned back in. Good thing I did, because obviously Ovechkin gets the game-winning goal just a couple of minutes into the overtime period. A 3-point night in a night where your team scores 3 goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs in a season where you broke Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record. Again, folks, it just feels like destiny. It feels like this team is going to go on a run because no one has believed in them, because they've done nothing but win all season long and set records all season long and find winners from nowhere all season long. I'm talking about Dylan Strome. I'm talking about Logan Thompson, right? And I mean, even Jacob Chikrin, right, on that defense, on their defense. So this is a Capitals team that feels like they've got what it takes to compete in a brutal postseason. And Jason, last night felt like the first in a string of about 14 wins that'll get them Lord Stanley's Cup, or 16, I should say.
Well, also, look at some of the other action from around the Stanley Cup playoffs last night. And we talked on Monday's show about, looked like a lot of blowouts, in game one of these series. Everything last night was close. Winnipeg beat St. Louis 2-1. Dallas in overtime finds a way to beat the Avalanche 4-3. And remember, they're playing without Jason Robertson right now, who suffered an injury in the final game. I believe it was the final game of the season. The Kings and Oilers played a banger with the Kings winning that 1-6-5. You had some good games last night in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
And we haven't even started the Battle of Florida yet. Like, everyone's talking about the Battle of Ontario, but let's talk about the Panthers and the Lightning getting ready to go off Tuesday night. That might be the best series out of all of them.
Yeah, well, that Ottawa-Toronto series is fun. That's a fun series. I don't mind watching those two teams in the battle for Ontario, sort of duking it out. And I think that will be a contentious series. And I don't know if it'll get a lot of attention here in the States. It should, but, pretty impressed with what I've seen here in the early going in the Stanley Cup playoffs. One other note from the NHL. I'm kind of stunned at it, but the Kraken fired Dan Bilesma after just 1 year. And I'm trying to scratch my head as to why. I watched him coach last year in Palm Springs with the AHL affiliate. And now, after one season, you're letting them go because what? They didn't make the playoffs? And I know everybody makes the playoffs in the NHL, so if you don't make the playoffs, you have to have done something pretty horrible. Ask Peter Laviolette, who is now looking for work as well. Hey, maybe the Kraken will hire him because this is a league of retreads after all. But, man, I was surprised to see the Kraken make that move, I have to say.
Yeah, I think it's just the nature of them being a bottom five team, and you can trace this all the way back to how the National Hockey League kind of changed the expansion draft after the Vegas Golden Knights. And it seems like early on in their franchise's history, in the Kraken's franchise history, that is, it may have been slightly of an overreaction by the league. We're seeing now, right, the Kraken, who have not been anywhere near as competitive of a team as the Golden Knights were, you know, what, 6 years ago, 7 years ago at this point, 8 years ago. Gosh, I'm getting old. Yeah, that's my thing, Jason. I think it's a league thing, and this is just the Kraken's way of kind of coping with it. I didn't really understand the movie.
No, I don't understand that firing at all. I'm sure we'll have Dennis Bernstein on later in the week from thefourthperiod.com and SiriusXM NHL Radio. We'll get his thoughts on that and more. We are coming back. Something to consider: the madness that is paying college athletes and the slippery slope it's going to take us down next. Welcome back to the show. Coming up in 10 minutes, we'll wrap it up with some odds and ends. Sam Yarnell. I was sitting up in bed last night, and I was ready. I wish I could have been on the air then, because when I saw this story last night after I finished bowling, when I saw this story about the NCAA basically just revamping everything in their rules and bylaws to allow colleges to pay athletes directly. And as the story on ESPN said, and can I just pick a bone here? And who knows, ESPN, it might have been a wire story that they picked off, or one of their own people may have wrote it. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Because I'm seeing this term thrown around a lot, and it's the term amateurism. Changing the face of amateurism is the NCAA with a decision to directly pay college athletes. Let's make something clear. It's not amateur athletics anymore. Stop throwing that word around as if this is somehow different from what we're seeing in Major League sports. The Nico Iamaleava story, that we talked about yesterday. Now Madden Iamaleava is going to go and play at UCLA. I couldn't get it right twice in a row. And everything that's taken place there. Then you got the quarterback from UCLA going to play at Tennessee, and everybody's calling it a trade. It's not a trade. It's the Wild West. And here's what I ask, Sam. I need help getting through this. Where does this end? Because it's not just going to end with the NCAA. This is going to find its way into college. It's going to find its way into high schools. If you are an exuberant parent of the kids going to Williamsport to play for 2 weeks on ESPN and the Little League World Series, what's stopping you from saying, you know what? We're not going unless we get paid. Everybody's going to have their hands out. This is not the Macarena. Everybody's going to have their hands out, Sam Yarnell. Because they've opened up the floodgates. Pandora's box has been opened. This is madness. And I don't know how it's stopped.
Man, I got really bad news for you. What you were just talking about, how this is like the first step in, it infiltrates college, and then it infiltrates the high school, and next thing you know,
AAU?
Middle schoolers are going to be... it actually worked in reverse order. The high schoolers started getting paid before the college kids did. This has been a thing for high schoolers for gosh knows how long. We can, look as close as their name brand professional athletes today who you and I talk about on the show. I'm not going to name names, but I can think of 3 of them off the top of my head who you and I have talked about on this show in the last week, who attended IMG Academy in Florida or some variation of it. There are a bunch of them all around the country. There's Bishop Gorman out by you in Las Vegas. They're all over. They're everywhere. Bishop Sycamore was the one that was like a fake one that got set up to try and compete with them. But what these schools do is they'll pay to have these kids move, and they'll pay for them to live at this location in a usually sunny state. And they basically get to live for free and go to high school just so that they can play a sport. There are Major League Baseball players who went to these schools. There are National Football League players who went to these schools. Heck, there are Major League Soccer players who went to these schools and reaped these benefits from the time they were 16 years old, 15 years old. And that's just the fact of the matter. I actually think that this legislation or reform coming out of the NCAA is the first step in this whole Wild West, as you accurately described it, that's going in the right direction. Because what this, in my mind, is intended to do is eliminate the discrepancy between colleges, eliminate the fact that Alabama is paying their third offensive lineman the same amount that, I don't know, Colorado State is paying their wide receiver one, their stud wide receiver, their quarterback one, their starting quarterback who's going to lead them to a Mountain West championship this year. I don't even know if that's the conference they're in anymore with all the realignment and stuff. But my point is this. It's creating more of a common ground between the big powerhouse schools and the littler guys who are struggling in an era of conference realignment to stay relevant year in and year out. So I do think this will ultimately be good, but still, you're exactly right. This is the Wild West, and we are in a bad place with all this athletic stuff right now.
I'm less worried about how it affects college athletics, and my concern is the children. I'm more concerned about this, about how this impacts high school sports, how this impacts youth sports. You're gonna see little kids getting sponsorship deals. I mean, you're gonna see,
already have
little
them.
Hulk. You're gonna see baby Gronk and
He
those
already
guys.
has
You're
them.
going to see, but you're going to see it now far more prevalent. You're going to see these vulture parents, swan diving in to go and get their money. And this has a negative impact on youth sports. And I, like I said, I don't see any way to stop it at this point, because if you're opening up amateurs to getting paid at the collegiate level, there's nothing that stops this from a legal perspective, at least in my point of view. From my limited legal knowledge of how they're going to be able to stop kids in high school and kids in youth sports. Like I said, if I'm a kid of a Little League World Series team, ESPN makes a fortune on the Little League World Series, exploiting these kids every year on TV. For crying out loud, I'd be asking for money if I were those parents too. I don't know. We're coming back. Odds and ends. Nico Harrison's admission. What does it mean? We'll get to it next. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Tuesday. But before we do, a couple of reminders. Make sure to check out the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. Available on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you get a podcast. Go and check it out. It is the TV version of this show, available in audio every day. You can listen to it on your way to work, while you're on the subway, in the Uber, whatever it may be. Go and check it out. You can also watch us on Spotify daily, and you can watch us on our new YouTube channel, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Clips from the show are there, and a whole bunch more. Without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Should it be the end for Nico Harrison when he gets up? Because, man, he just feels the need to keep defending this Luka Doncic deal. And in his latest defense, he said, who could have known the fans would be so upset that Luka was so beloved here in Dallas? Nico Harrison's admission that Luka Doncic, he didn't realize just how popular he was in Dallas. Is that admission sort of a death knell for him?
I think it is definitely the end of whatever PR team or firm or whomever works in the Dallas Mavericks front office. Now, listen, I I don't want to stand in the corner of Nico Harrison because I don't think anyone really does right now, but just hear me out for a second. As much as we may sit here and think, oh my gosh, how did you not think that your cornerstone face your franchise player was so important to the fans? What the heck? Well, I got news for you, people. The GMs, they're not really concerned about the fans. They're concerned about the W's, and they're concerned about the dollar signs. A lot of D's, not a lot of F's. The president, the owner, or I guess in the NBA we call them the governor, right? They're the ones who are concerned with the fans, yada, 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 yeah, whatever. Nico Harrison maybe didn't see Luka Doncic in the same way that all the fans did, and I would also guess wasn't necessarily privy to how the fans potentially felt about Luka Doncic. I think that's more the PR team that he hires. So again, I don't want to stand in his corner because ultimately it is his fault for putting wrong people in wrong positions. But it is the PR team that he hires to come to him and say immediately when this becomes an idea, listen, man, you got to understand that if you make this move or do this or do anything to Luka, it probably is the end of you in the eyes of Dallas. That is not necessarily Nico's job. Nico's job is to read the spreadsheets, understand the analytics, compare them, and do what's best for his basketball team on the court. Again, he hired the wrong people and they did their job poorly, but I don't think all of the blame, all of it, goes on Nico Harrison. Definitely a portion of it, and a large portion at that, but I think that we are giving the guy a little bit too hard of a time.
Well, I'll tell you this, too. If the Mavericks are healthy, who knows how much different this conversation is. Because if Anthony Davis doesn't get hurt the first time he steps on the floor and slips on a banana peel, it feels like every time he's out there. If you don't have that happen, if Kyrie doesn't get hurt, if this team isn't putting 7 guys on the floor at one point in the season because they have so many injuries, the conversation on this whole thing might be a whole lot different. NFL odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Browns and Giants fielding trade calls as we get close to the top of the NFL draft, according to ESPN's Peter Schrager. Surprising?
No, I mean, it's smokescreen season. It's going to be smokescreen season until about 7 p.m. on Thursday night, an hour before the draft gets underway. However, this isn't surprising, and quite frankly, I've kind of been under the assumption that this has been the case for the past few days, weeks, months, because when you look at the field of players and you look at the team needs, it could benefit both of those franchises massively to trade back, and it seems like there are a couple of teams that would be more than willing to and have the capital to trade up into their spots. So again, I think that this has been a thing behind the scenes for a long time, and they finally decided to kind of leak it to the media, maybe to push one team more in the direction of trading for them, to let them know that every team is involved now rather than just maybe the one that thought they were. At the end of the day, Jason, we've got a new favorite to pick Shedeur Sanders. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers instead of the New Orleans Saints now. And I think that the writing is on the wall that somebody is going to trade up into the top 5 and go wild on Shedeur.
But here's what's interesting. The Giants right now picking at 3, if they don't trade that pick, the second best odds for them to pick somebody is Shedeur Sanders, according to FanDuel right now. Abdul Carter at minus 470. It's a big favorite. Don't get me wrong. But then Shedeur Sanders at plus 550 is the next pick for them. Right now, Cam Ward, obviously the favorite to go 1, with Travis Hunter favored to go number 2 in that draft. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's interesting on the Giants then, because those odds, and again, it's draft odds, of all of the things that we use odds to look at and kind of assess what might be the potential outcome, the draft is the worst. It is the worst. But of those odds, you think about the Giants' needs. They just signed 2 quarterbacks, right? You're not going to keep 3 quarterbacks on the active roster. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. They've got a solid defensive line. That's definitely not one of their team needs. I really wouldn't be surprised, Jason, in a year where Dayball and Shane need to make a statement, if they trade out of 3 and bring in a haul of picks just to try and extend their lifespan in New York a little bit more.
Yeah, well, it's all about self-preservation at this point for those guys, for sure. It's going to put the wraps on us for this Tuesday edition of the program. Thanks to Brian Kenny for stopping by. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. Tomorrow, Kurt Heelan on the show. Talk NBA playoffs. A whole bunch of draft preview coverage for you as well. Don't miss it. We'll see you then.